beyond our line. She's going to share her story, and you're going to see a little bit of a theme. I'm going to see if you catch it as we go on throughout the day.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see so many in the house. I have a new, unique transplant journey. Is that I served as donor and recipient for myself. And my journey began with a diagnosis of systemic lupus erythematosus, which threw my organ system into all kind of chaos. Lupus attacked my digestive system, then it went to my respiratory system, and finally it attacked my blood system. And that is where I had the most trouble, because it threw me into non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And non-Hodgkin's lymphoma can be very tricky, but autoimmune diseases itself can be tricky. And so my journey began with a number of blood transfusions, and platelet transfusions, but that didn't cure me. I was also receiving high doses of chemotherapy and radiation, but that could not cure me. So once the doctors had declared that they could not do anything else for me, the suggestion came up that I should look into receiving an autologous stem cell transplant. And so I was forwarded over to the Mayo Clinic, where I met Dr. Vivek Roy. And Dr. Roy was really good at my concerns for being my own donor, as well as the whole process of the transplant. And Dr. Roy looked me in my eyes and he said, "Do you want to really get a transplant?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And so I had to be courageous and go forth with the process. So that led me to a lot of blood tests, a lot of vaccinations, and then ultimately going to radiology and getting a catheter placed in my neck. I had already been placed with a port in my chest 3 years before, but this process began in 2014, and at the top of 2015, that's when I got the catheter placed in my neck for apheresis. And apheresis is a process whereby they give you some injections to increase your stem cells so they would be ready when the machine is placed on you to separate out your cells from your blood. And so that was a 3-day process at Mayo. You get it placed, get on the machine for about 5 hours, go home that evening, return that next morning, same process. And then the 3rd day, the same process. But however, on that 3rd day, I was in the cafeteria with my mother, who was my caretaker, and she's sitting out there with my aunt. And they called us on the cell phone and said, "Before you leave, we think we have enough cells, so you are going back to radiology and they can take the device out of your neck." And I was like, oh, I'm so grateful for that. Because you know, having that is very uncomfortable. And so that day, I was glad. Those cells that were harvested were taken to a special location and they were frozen. They were treated also for reinfusion. And so during the months between February and April, I was receiving high doses of chemotherapy as well, and platelets and blood occasionally. So back and forth out to Mayo Clinic. And then on April 15th, 2015, that was the day that changed my life. That was the day that the cells were reinfused back into me. And 2 weeks later, I was quarantined still in my room, but then the stem cells, the doctor said, okay, it's taking. And so I was able to go home. Thank you.